Welcome to the June 20th meeting of the Design Review Board. We are currently waiting for Board Member Kim to have quorum, so please bear with us at this time. Thank you. Now that we have quorum, can we have a roll call, please?
Board Member Malat,
Here.
Board Member Kim,
Here.
Vice Chair Rosner.
Here.
Sorry.
Now is the time for oral communications for anything that's not on the agenda. Is there anything from the public that they wish to speak about that's not currently on the agenda? Is there anything online?
There's no one online.
All right, thank you. Is there a staff briefing tonight?
I have no briefing for this evening, Chair.
Thank you. There are no minutes currently to be adopted. Right now, they're not available. So with that, we will move right along to our first public hearing of the night, which is 801 Tiburon Boulevard. The applicant has 20 minutes to present their plan. And just as a reminder, that'll be followed by public comment. Each member of the public who wishes to speak has 3 minutes. And then the applicant will have 5 minutes to address anything else they wish to speak about. And then the board will close to the public and deliberate. So with that, would the applicant please come to the podium?
As a general contractor in Marin, not a developer, I understand the process and difficulties of building a home here. And that is why when we started the process, we reached out to our neighbours to show them the plans and discuss any concerns they had. I think our design team have come up with a sensitive solution within the town ordinance, and I hope the Design Review Board approves our project so we can get started on building our new home. I would like to introduce you to our design professional, Colleen Paz, with Open Space, who will present our design for your review. Thank you.
Good evening, and a warm thanks to both the staff and the design review team for their time. So we are here to review the changes to 801 Tiburon Boulevard based on our last design review. There we go. Here we have the house originally in 1952, and then below the house as purchased by the Harts in 2020, and note the dense vegetation along the property line. This is the house in its current context. You can see that the town has grown up around it. There's many single, but also double and sometimes even triple story houses nearby. Oops. The palette that the owners have chosen is a natural one that would blend into the hillside. Again, here is the updated view from Tiburon Boulevard with the front of the partial upper story pushed backwards. And the house is sort of set back into this site to fall back from the corner and to keep that area open. Here's the view from Gilmartin Boulevard. This side is mostly blocked by the sort of mature growth of trees here. So you'll mostly just see the elevation of the garage. Here are our site constraints from the last review. We have neighbors to the north who have outdoor entertaining space. We have neighbors to the south with some upper glazing. We have the issue of privacy and noise from the road, which pushes the house back to a sort of practical 60-foot setback. And then we have our driveway, which has to come from this area. It's sort of pinned in by existing utilities. We also have a view corridor we've kept open for 779 Tiburon. Existing house. This is the proposed plan. So we've sort of stuck with the existing H plan that's on the site now, but turned it into more of a courtyard house in the update. There aren't too many changes to this plan based on the first design review. It is just the staircase has been updated to accommodate the moved upper story. So based on the comments, we looked at a number of things, but this is where we landed. We've pushed the front facade wall back 15 feet, 8 inches. We've pushed the overhang back, the sort of roof to the deck back, another 9. We've removed 120 square feet from the mass and pushed this wall back another 4 feet, 8 inches in order to align with the courtyard and create some symmetry. Changes to the elevation from the Gilmartin side, you'll see the volume moved back. There's actually, this was a solid wall before, so now it is just a louvered design. So the solid wall has been pushed back 15 feet, 8 inches. We've also dropped the height of the roof 6 inches. From the front, it's harder to read the change, but you can see the drop in 6 inches. From the southern side, it's a little hard to read the lines here, but the existing windows are a bit over the fence line, and we're actually dropping the floor, the finished floor level 21 inches to increase the privacy along this edge. And so our head heights for the windows have dropped, but the actual view line for a standing individual has also dropped almost 2 feet. And you can see here the change where the house has been pulled back. Along this edge, we also only have clear story windows with the exception of one casement window for the bathroom. And the owners are open to making that privacy glazing, but we really don't see these as anything to worry about. From the rear facade on the east, we have the partial upper story seen here, and the majority of the house actually falls below the existing small ranch house's roof line. And again, we're having just minimal clear story windows for some daylighting, and these could also be privacy glazing. The site section showing the change and the general site layout. You can see the further back we push into the site, the higher up the house needs to come to accept this grade. So we're trying to sort of straddle the flat middle. This section is not changed from the last one, but it shows the ADU, the garage, and the kitchen as they sit in the site. So reviewing what we got from the last design review and the comments from the board, we looked at these areas of concern. We have the gazebo at 10 Gilmartin and the small loft in the rear unit of 835 Tiburon. Oops, setback. So looking at our buildable area in regards to these, and then the ADU setbacks, which are reduced even from that, we end up with this area. We're pinned in with the garage needing to be at this driveway. The ADU ideally is located close to the street for both privacy and ease of access. And then this is showing just the massing of the house if we make it one floor. It's a lot of lot coverage, and we end up without the sort of more varied perimeter. We don't have enough exterior glazing. Section view of those ideas. And again, the location of the ADU, which is adding 47 feet to the 4-foot setback from the rear fence line. So one of the first things we looked at was moving the upper level to the ground floor, keeping the courtyard layout or the H plan, which allows us the maximum amount of glazing. We end up pushing the ADU further back, which lands sort of within the slope, which means the ADU has to come up. The most practical thing when you push back into the slope is to orient it towards the slope. And of course, we could take advantage of this minimal setback. I know the ADU is not, is accepted from design review, but it's an important piece of the puzzle, so we'll keep it in. So this is showing where our ADU would land if we use the 4-foot minimum setback. which is not ideal for my clients and probably not ideal for any of the neighbors. Again, that is where that could land if we end up pushing it back. So looking at another idea that was brought up was, what if we put it over the garage? Interior circulation wise, this leads to a lot of issues because we have all of our bedrooms here. And so to have the primary suite further away and sort of out of earshot creates both a staircase problem, but also a sort of practical problem within the house. In terms of the neighbors, we now have our primary glazing facing into the courtyard, which then looks back at both houses. And here you can see it in section. It's the sort of away from street glazing is now looking inwardly at both neighbors. Here that is, if we slide it over, here it is. It still blocks Tam from the neighbor. I know this is a crude markup, but you get the idea. Another idea was sliding it over the ADU. If we slide that back, we are now even closer to our neighbor's outdoor space, and we are still looking back at both of them. We also now have a primary bedroom over sort of rentable ADU, which creates privacy concerns and more circulation issues. And that is where that would land here. And again, sort of masked here to show where it would land based on the story poles. Somebody mentioned maybe moving the whole house forward. If we did that, we would lose our entertaining space in the front yard. There is ample space in the backyard for us to use this as our sort of pool and entertaining area. And there's a lot of upsides to that for my clients. Downside being we now have 2 pool zones abutting each other. We could always use the ADU to screen, but that also isn't ideal for anybody. And we're uncomfortable with how close this gets to the street. So this is how we landed back where we started, which we think is the most sensitive solution. With this, we can face our courtyard facing windows on the upper level into the courtyard, away from all of our closest neighbors and towards the street. The only glazing we have on the back and the southern facade are privacy glazing with clear stories and do not create any concerns for looking into somebody's window 120 feet away or even 5 feet away. Looking at our story poles, we think the house is actually of modest size. Some of these poles are less than 9 feet tall off existing grade. The majority of the house falls below the existing roof line, and there's one small portion that is at its highest point, 23 feet above grade. It's the story poles today from the front. And so reviewing the views, again, when we set out to set the interior floor heights and the overall height for the house, we were looking at views uphill. And so the main floor of this house experiences no impact on their view. The gazebo can see our roof if they stand at the property line. Our entire structure falls below the finished grade at the patio, so we are technically not in front of anybody uphill. Again, these are from the higher story poles, but from the inside and all of the primary spaces, our roof is not visible except occasionally through a railing or when you approach the hedge. From the main deck level, we are a blip at the bottom of the screen. And again, minimal glazing at the back versus more glazing at the side versus proximity towards the rear. And those 3 options, again, shown here, standing on the upper deck of 10 Gilmartin. Looking at the concerns for 835, again, we consider their primary views to be straightforward and sort of straight through the framed windows and not borrowed over our roof line. The window we're looking at here is the small loft in a rear unit and certainly not a primary space. The house is oriented towards its courtyard and all of the bedrooms hug the fence line like ours with no substantial glazing or views framed here. Again, heavily vegetated state that was found when my clients bought it. Conditions we're trying to improve is the current existing finished floor does look down into that house. With the reduced finished floor on the ground level, we'll no longer have that problem. And again, with the windows that are being placed upstairs, they're all clear story height with the exception of one. Those windows is viewed from inside the house at 801. the orientation of these windows, and then sort of looking at the geometry of it all. If this is the clear story window and it's facing forward, their view is broken by their own hedges here towards the Golden Gate Bridge and by our proposed project here. But it's almost as if we're giving more of a view over our site than they have over their own. Here's our proposed project. Here's a roof that they raised substantially in 1995 that blocks their view of the water from here. And here's Golden Gate Bridge, which I would say is the more important view and the one that the windows seem to be oriented towards. We did some shadow studies and found that because we are oriented northwest of the house, we really have minimal to no impact. We only show shadows after 5 o'clock, and even then, it's typically just before the sun setting. Here's the first revision and then an improved condition in the second revision. And so to summarize our changes, we have pushed the front wall here back 10 feet 5 inches. We've reduced the overall roof height by 6 inches. Our rear setback that you can't see in this render is from the upper story still 91 feet away from the rear property line. We've changed this solid wall to be louvered to reduce the bulk and mass. And we've also dropped the fence variance. So there are, aside from that, no changes to the landscape.
Good evening, members of the Design Review Board. My name is Len Rifkind, and I represent the owners of 801 Tiburon Boulevard. And I think you saw a really superior presentation just now by the architect, and she's really been quite thoughtful. And I think she listened, and the owners listened to the DRB's comments from your meeting in May and tried to implement them as much as possible. And they've thought about every possible place that the second story could go. And they put it in the least impactful place that I think reduces the impacts to the two neighbors that seem to be concerned, 10 Gilmartin and 835 Tiburon Boulevard. I am hoping the board had a chance to see my letter that came late. If people saw that, I apologize for my spelling of clear story. I now know how to spell it properly. So what I want to emphasize to the board is, as a lawyer, I care about findings, and hopefully that your board, as I suggest on page 3 of my letter, we outlined all the different findings that you have to make under your code 1652-020H. And I think that you can make all of those findings. I want to emphasize a couple of things. One, as I think Colleen made quite clear, we don't see any impact to 10 Gilmartin. Everything is below the gazebo. I mean, we're talking a pretty modest house below 4,000 feet. The highest point is 23 feet 5 inches. That's as things go, pretty modest. And so now we turn our attention to 835, which is to the south. And the claim is that from a clear story window in the ADU portion, or maybe when it was built, the second unit portion of that house. So we're not even talking about the main part of the house. And I have not been there, but I am told that this loft area, you have to actually go up onto some sort of step in order to be able to even be able to see out of the clear story. And now if you face forward, they've built portions that kind of block Richardson Bay, but the main view is Richardson Bay. And if they cut some trees to the southwest, you'd actually see the Golden Gate Bridge towers. If you want to see the Mount Tam, you have to be fairly close to the window and turn your head at some kind of an angle that would be over the middle of the adjacent property, 801. I would suggest, as Mr. Malott wrote his hillside design guidelines oh so long ago, that's a borrowed view. It's a side view. It's not a primary view, and it's not a view from a primary room, much like a living room or a dining room or a kitchen. It's a loft and an ADU portion of the house. So that is not a view that I think merits as much protection from the primary. And I would hate to see this board not approve this design, because if you consider something like that and you say, oh, we're going to we're going to give some protection to this side borrowed view. I think you might be setting some kind of unfortunate precedent that now you're going to get, every time you get another application in front of you, you're going to get neighbors coming in and saying, from whatever obscure angle of whatever obscure window, looking over another property, that they can't see some landmark in this beautiful place that we call Tiburon. So I urge you to approve the project as it's presented to you. I think that the applicant and their architect did an amazingly good job of listening to the board and have implemented all of your requests, and the findings can be made. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have with 2 minutes to spare.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have questions for any one of the representatives of the applicant?
Yeah, I was reading your letter on page 3, the second paragraph. You wrote architect Pods will share a shade study that will demonstrate there are significant or material shading impacts before 5 p.m.
Oh, a typo. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. And I even typed not. I don't know. This is the wrong draft. So I think she made quite clear in her shade study, the only time you're going to see any shade at all is after 5 o'clock, year round. So there is really not a significant shade impact by this project.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Let's see.
Could you give me the ceiling heights of both the lower and upper floors?
That,
10 on the lower and 8.5 on the upper? Thank you.
and so as what they did is, of course, they dropped the roof line 6 inches from the last design as well. So, they shrunk this second story, 6 inches roof, 10 foot, 5 inches back from the and louvered a portion of the wall. They basically have shrunk the second story in every which way to try to reduce its impact as much as they could.
Anyone else have any questions? I have a few.
Architect or attorney?
Architectural questions, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. The first was, you mentioned one of the options you looked at, moving the second level to the other side, caused some issues around glazing facing which neighbors? Does that create a problem?
Well, it would be both. So if we move the volume towards the street, we wouldn't orient the bedroom windows to the street because it would be so close to Gilmartin. And so we would have them facing into the courtyard, which is the central feature of the house. And so whatever side of the upper levels facing the courtyard is where we'll have our primary glazing.
So sorry, so you would switch the floor plan?
We'd mirror it, yeah.
Okay, mirror it to look, okay. Thank you. And then how much, your other option, I think pushing the whole house back, you mentioned you're gonna start hitting the grade. How much grading are we talking about? Like what's the height of the retaining wall that you'd have to carve out?
So we're already retaining at the back of the house here. You can see the existing grade line. And so if we come back to here, it's now closer to 4 feet, but we're also now getting closer to this neighbor, which seems to be a point of tension.
Okay, so it'd be a 4-foot retaining wall-ish, okay.
We have a 2-foot wall. I think we're 4 feet from here to finish floor here.
I think I'm done for now. Thank. At this time, we will invite members of the public to speak if they want. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Carl Weichel. My wife and I, Kim, have been co-owners of 835 Tiburon Boulevard since 1985, adjacent to the Hart's property. Their faux attempt to slightly modify their plans changes really nothing for us. We continue to have many concerns regarding the towering second story that will block our view, our sunlight, reduce our privacy, as well as tarnish the traditional style of the neighborhood. The DRB May 16th report quoted in the IJ today said the board agreed that it would not be able to support the project as submitted as would impact the existing views by adjacent neighbors. 7 letters of opposition were submitted by neighbors, including both contiguous neighbors, yet they chose to disregard the DRBs and the neighbors' recommendations. We find their application unacceptable for the following reasons. Our view from the master bedroom and from Kim's art studio would be completely eliminated. The view of Mount Tammany reduces over 75% of our view of the North Bay. As an artist, this blockage of the view would be demoralizing. As it was misstated, we are no longer using the rear of the house from an ADU since 2022, and we occupy the full space. We challenge their request for a second story based on Tiburon's guiding principles. The site layout in relation to neighborhood, it is imbalanced and obtrusive. Most of the homes on Tiburon Boulevard are single stories such as ours. They can create a lovely home with a beautiful views with a single story. And I think we saw some of their options to create that single story. When we approach and enter the front door of our home, the view of this towering box-shaped designs dominates and makes us feel squeezed in and lacking privacy, even with our slightly revised design. It would greatly diminish the beauty and natural ambience of our home in the front yard. From the proposed second story, they would have a direct vantage point into 2 bedrooms and our bathroom, greatly reducing our privacy. The afternoon sunlight would be diminished along the whole northwest side of our home. Also, it would create a canyon effect that would amplify traffic sound, as well as outdoor weddings we hear from the Art and Garden Center located on the other side. The revised plans calls for an FAE of 340 square feet above the acceptable allocation. When adding the ADU and the garage that are not in the calculations, their request will be a building of approximately 5,300 gross square feet. We request that that not be approved. We accept that they can erect a 6-foot fence along their southwest property line or our northwest, which will considerably block our current view of the bay. However, we request that they are not permitted to plant the 9 through 12-foot trees from the pool down to Tiburon Boulevard, as our entire view of this area would be eliminated. In summary, the second story, as where it's proposed along our property, is unacceptable for all the reasons above and would adversely affect our property value. We sincerely hope you do not approve these plans. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom?
There are no comments from Zoom.
I invite the applicant to come up for up to 5 minutes.
We won't need 5 minutes. You have a full agenda tonight, so we'll take mercy. I know it's hard for the board when you hear neighbors saying our view is impacted. If you may recall, Colleen showed one of the slides, maybe we can put it up, where there was a tremendous amount of vegetation that existed. The picture that you saw, maybe we can put it up. It was taken in 2011. And it provided, there was no view from 835 looking to the northwest towards Mount Tam and all of that. Yeah, I think that's the one. You see, it's hard to see with the lights on, but the point being that that's what it looked like. That's decades of growth that you're looking at there. The applicant, I mean, the neighbor said they bought in the, I think they said mid-90s. So clearly all those plants existed at that time. We know under the Tiburon Municipal Code, Chapter 15, the view you get is the view you had on the day you bought. There's a large amount of vegetation there. And then when the Harts purchased in 2020, they removed a lot of that vegetation. And the complaint was, oh my gosh, you've exposed our whole privacy in house. You need to put it, you need to create the privacy again. So what is it? They want privacy, but now they want view. And so I think we've got some internally inconsistent comments going here. And I think that you're not entitled to a view that you didn't have when you bought it. I heard the neighbor just mention that there was views of from the master bedroom. The only pictures that I've seen, and I think the board has seen, and it's in the administrative record, are from this loft space in the back. So if there's a picture from the master bedroom claiming that there's view impairment, I haven't seen it yet, and I don't think your board has seen it yet. So bottom line is, I still say, under the hillside guidelines, to the extent they apply, we don't have a primary view at issue here. And there never was an issue. There never was a view until the trees got cut down by the Harts in 2020 to try to clean it up. So I urge your board to approve the project as submitted. Thank you. Colleen, do you want to add anything? Any questions? Thank you.
I was just reading something. I wasn't at the first meeting, but I watched the video, and I believe the applicant cited one of the reasons why you're planning for the second level is to optimize a view for the master bedroom. And I guess my question is, what I'm interested in, a sincere question, like, where is the best view from that, like, with no constraints? Where did you explore solely for optimizing that view from that bedroom?
If we move it too close to the street, we found that just having a bedroom that close to the corner was not ideal. So initially, we'd looked at the sort of northwest corner, and then it was the southeastmost corner, so sort of like further back into the site. But then we thought, based on the location of the gazebo, really pushing it forward and then centering it on the courtyard would allow for a number of daylighting things to happen. So we can have this sort of like light well, and then everything's sort of based around this shared outdoor space that opens up the core of the house. And so then it just became, as soon as we had the courtyard, that would also shade it. And it was the best location to not have too much solar gain, having the glazing on the north side versus the south.
Okay, so it
But
was,
noise was the constraint for the other corner.
okay, so it was more about the ideal place for the master that has a view, not that specific view from that corner.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Doesn't matter. All right, I think at this point we will close for discussion amongst the board. Who would like to kick us off?
So I was looking back at the minutes and trying to remember exactly what happened, and I think Chair Chong and I sort of agreed that we saw a one-story solution where the plate height of the first floor could actually be raised so that could capture the views. And the second thing is, for me, it wasn't about the house behind it. It was the one at 835 Tiburon Boulevard that had the most impacts. And the proximity of that second floor to that house, it's a pretty drastic change. And this is exactly why there's so much controversy in Belveron and the other areas where the second story is an issue, because it does have an impact on the neighboring homes. So I think it's clear where I'm at.
I have to say, I'm reluctant to say the second story is not possible, but I tend to agree that if you're going to build this much house on that lot, it probably ought to all be first floor. And you've got a huge front yard to deal with. I don't believe the gazebo up the hillside would ever be used, so I don't think it should be built, honestly, because it further impugns the privacy issue. There's lots of impact from this house on the house to the south. It's like a cliff being built next to them. And no matter how you put the glazing or how elegantly you site the second floor, there's going to be some impact there. The only place where there would be minimal impact would be over the present site of the ADU. And the advantage of to putting the second story farther uphill is that it digs it into the hillside, assuming you do follow the design guidelines. And that means there's less water blockage for the people uphill as that second story is pushed farther toward them. You have alternatives in this site to build a house that doesn't impact the neighbors. And I think that's the reason we're here, sort of, is to try to encourage those alternatives. Mr. Rifkin made some mentions of the view blockage caused by the trees. Trees can be cut, foliage can be cut, buildings can't be cut. There's a difference in the quality of view blockage between a building blocking a view and trees blocking a view. We all know that. So that's a non-starter, in my opinion. I can't approve this the way it's designed right now. I would say it needs to be a single story solution or reduce scope or something.
Yeah, just to say again, I wasn't at the first meeting, but I watched the video and I visited the sites actually twice. I went back today. I'm in agreement. I can't support the current design. I'm not completely opposed to a second story, and I think we should discuss that when I'm finished, but definitely not a second story at that location. I think from 10 Gilmartin, I think it's visible when you're walking around the gazebo and there's a structure there and it blocks a little bit of water, but when you're sitting down in the couch, you don't see any structure. And I would say if the applicant continues to want to have a second level, that be from at least my guidance, that's kind of the bar. It's like, is there a structure that sits out when you're sitting down in that outdoor living area, or not? Because you're obviously going to see a building when you're up walking around in the place, but I didn't really sense a major impact when kind of in that seat.
But the gazebo is an accessory structure and the views are from a primary interior view. So just
That,
yeah.
we can get to that, but it was more like, it's an outdoor living space. I think regardless is what I'm saying is that view impact, I think, isn't, in my opinion, is very limited to when you're walking and navigating the area, not when you're actually, if I were living there, like sitting and having company in that house. 835 is a different story. It's not just, I think, to what Jim was, both of you were saying, but it's really not just the view, that view from that one location. It's just massive when you're entering the property. And there's a deck there. So it is a major impact, I think, on the general, the property in general, and just like, if you walk in your house every day and that there's a privacy, there's massing, it's not just about the view. I think that is one piece of just the general problem. That is a second structure 16 feet away, significantly higher than a much lower property. So that's a major issue. I would say, again, the last thing, there's so many options, and I know, Suzanne, you mentioned last meeting some of the limitations that we're discussing about in the redesign are self-imposed with the 60-foot, setback. Is there that big of a noise issue? 40 feet versus 60 feet? You're still on Tiburon Boulevard, still having the room on Tiburon Boulevard.
Design, right? So there's the courtyard's probably a very primal focal point. So if you focus that way and have views that way, you can sort of contain the noise in a way.
Yeah.
There's not as much impact on the uphill neighbor looking down on it,
Yeah.
except for one thing, and that's a dark color of the roof. a white roof there or a very light roof would be blinding in certain times of the day, mostly around noontime. So I think that ought to be addressed too, in their color scheme. I do like the idea of moving the building downhill farther and cutting it into the hillside. It's great, it's small, but there's a 4-foot high berm on the front of the living room. They're already 4 feet above the existing grade before you get to the swimming pool. So, you know, the house is not settled into the ground completely.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty there's pretty phenomenal views from the front of the house.
From everywhere.
From everywhere in the house. And I think
I would support, you know, even higher, if it's just a one-story building, I would
it's crazy.
raise.
Yeah.
Or a split level, a step up of a half a story at the back or something, but you know, you don't have to have everything on one level in that house. They don't have everything on one level. And at the same time, it would help to nestle it into the ground if they're a little more careful on their grading.
Yeah.
So
Are we, I'm asking staff, what are the current timelines look like for?
Sorry, the current PSA deadline is June 22nd. So if we were gonna continue it, they would need to agree to an extension for 90 days.
I think the one thing, thank you. I think the one thing that I want to make sure we provide feedback to the applicant, seeing as we're missing 2 board members that had spoken against a second story, at least my interpretation from Brian was like no second story, is what is our feedback from a first story versus second story, and what limitations or concerns we'd have with a second story redesign? Because I don't want 2 of us to say we'd entertain certain second stories and then without giving specific, like giving a little bit more direction on what would be tolerable from a second story.
I think it comes down to the impact on the neighbors. If the second story impacts the neighbors dramatically as the current proposal does, then it's probably a non-starter from everybody's
Do you
standpoint.
think a second story on the other side towards Gilmartin would impact the neighbors on
Less.
Gilmartin? On Gilmartin,
No, because Gilmartin is 40, 50 feet wide, plus there's setbacks on the other side. So it's probably 100 feet or 80 to 100 feet.
so you'd be open to a
separation.
second story towards the Gilmartin side and not the other side, not the side.
If you're gonna put a second story, I would pull it back uphill rather than push it down toward Tiburon Boulevard.
I think if it were a one-story solution, I think. I'm not gonna put words
Doesn't
in his
matter.
mouth, but Brian and I would probably support raising the floor and also a higher ceiling height if it were just a one-story.
As long as it doesn't aggravate the situation with
Yeah.
the neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a single story should definitely do it. It's a 5,000 square foot building. It's a big building. So, you know, it's one of those things we ought to just try to minimize its impact. That's the goal.
Is there anything else aside from the building height that we'd like to provide feedback on for the applicant?
Darker color. Particularly on the roof.
I think it's gonna be dark anyway with solar panels, so.
In spite of it all, we're not on a beachfront property.
Yeah, okay, I think we provided, I mean, look, there's a lot of solutions, in my opinion, again, for one story, that's just like controversial. So that the board sounds like could get behind with, you know, maximizing, there are a lot of options on maximizing the view, I believe, for a single level home. And I think there are some potential options for a second level on the other side, but there obviously just has risks involved with, you know, solving one problem may open the doors of another, so it's just something to consider.
Staff, what how do we make a motion right now?
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
add a couple of things.
Yeah.
Since it's a huge area
Mhm.
and we're talking single story, the size of the roof panels becomes important because it'll just be an enormous field of roof. If it's a single story, I think they should look very carefully at low slope panels to sections so that they can pick up high tree views and clear stories or hillside views or whatever, but not just a flat roof that extends over the whole area. A flat roof that big seen from above is deadly.
I agree. Can't be a monolithic roof.
Yes. Would anyone like to make a motion pending staff's guidance on the?
Your motion would be to continue the hearing, and if we want to look at a date certain, we could do that as well. Or we could just continue it, and I think I'm looking at the applicants only because of how long you would need to do any of the revisions and to come back. Because we are entering our lovely summer season where I have a harder time getting a quorum.
I beg your pardon.
I'm here.
I wasn't speaking personally to you.
I
Mr.
mean,
Grant.
I don't think we need to have a date certain, right? We could just.
We don't need to, but I was looking at the applicants solely because sometimes we look at them and think, how long will you need? And you can certainly open the hearing solely to ask the architect that, or you can just continue it and not have a date certain.
Do we need a commitment that they're gonna sign before we pass that motion?
No,
It's not expired
they
yet.
can hire, it's not expired yet,
Oh,
so they can sign it after that time.
I move to continue. Is that all I need to say? I move to continue this to another hearing.
Second.
That's fine. You don't have to have a date certain.
can we have a voice vote, to move the, motion to continue, the application to a date to be determined? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Thanks very much. The next item is 275 Diviso Street. The applicant has 20 minutes.
Scroll to the next one. Yeah. And if you want to go back up, hold up.
Right. Hello, my name is Ehsan Karimian, and I live at 275 Diviso Street. I and my wife Mona are both dentists. We moved to the Bay Area for school, and then this picture is from 15 years ago. When then that's where we came to know Tiburon. We would drive around here, dream of having a home here. This is the picture that I put on my presentation 2017 when we were here for the design review meeting to get approval. My wife was pregnant with my son, and we've been involved with building this vacant lot for years and years. This is a picture of that boy. Last year when we moved in, took about 5.5 to 6 years. It was a rough ride. We love the house, but it was a big toll on me, and took a long time. We're here tonight together to put the last piece of this puzzle and hopefully close it for us and for town. This is the original renderings of the house. When we were looking at different houses and we were thinking of designing the house, one thing we noted was that, there were older houses here and that I'm sure were built 30, even 20 years ago. And they were all nice, but the most beautiful thing about every house you looked at was mainly the views and the landscape of Tiburon. So we had this feeling that no matter how hard we try, the best thing here is just to try to blend the house into the landscape. That's why we try to use all a natural palette and darker tones. If you walk downtown, look at our house, you kind of cannot see it, and it's surrounded by all these white houses and old Tiburon. So basically, this is a picture of the actual house that I took during construction. So basically, the main goal to design this house was kind of to blend it with the nature. And you can imagine with designing a house on a vacant lot, there's so many things to look at. So at the time there were so many decisions to make, and unfortunately, I didn't pay attention to the fence that our landscape architect designs. This is the fence that was designed for the house originally. It's a grape stake fence that as soon as we caught it, I and my wife both like this can be an eyesore with the design of the house we have, trying to have everything at a minimal, basically. This is so what we did was to change it to a vinyl mesh fence. The reason was because I mean these fences are widely used in Tiburon. You can see it all around. They're more durable. They're low maintenance. They're aesthetically more pleasing because they allow the landscape between the two properties to look infill connected. And when we talked to fire marshal, they said they prefer this type of fence over a wood fence that dries out over time. So this is the drawing that you see, and I put this picture so that you can kind of make sense of what is what. On the back, this is the mature. On the back, you can see the mature landscape on the neighbor's side. That's the post for the fence, and that guy is my brother. You can kind of get a feel of how tall the neighbor's mature landscape is behind the back. And on the front, we put a row of a laurel hedge that the neighbor requested us at the beginning to put in. So the fence is in place now. I just put these fences, wood fences in the neighborhood. This is all over Tiburon. What happens over time with wood fences, they break, the connectors can rot. Sometimes the support blocks, and overall it has never been a great choice over time. So once we found out about this change that we need to make, first I wrote to the neighbors and let them know about the change we want to make, and as part of one of our revisions, we put it in the plans. I mean, there were other items on the revision requested, so that got approved. On the next revision, we put the detail of this change, and that revision got approved. So in October of 2023, we built the mesh fence, and once we put that in, we heard from town that the approval is not correct, and we need to go to a staff level design review for this fence. So we quickly submitted everything because we wanted to meet the deadline. And that was again immediately in October. And then we heard from the planning department that they prefer to send us to the design review board. There was a staff shortage at the time, so they said, and people were on medical leave, so they said we just separate this issue from finaling the house. So that's why we're here tonight. So then I asked for the reason for this decision. They said because it's a new fence, there may be, and the original fence was a wood fence, there may be some concerns with privacy or sound isolation, which we haven't heard anything from neighbors. We only got a support letter for this fence, which is on file. This is the report from the staff at the time about the Dan Watrous Road, and he mentioned at the beginning that that there's a dense hedge landscaping, mature landscape between the properties, and that's also mentioned in the new report that Sam wrote. You guys probably read it. So this is the outline of the lot. And if you look on the sides, you can kind of see the mature vegetation from this aerial view. So this is the side of the house towards the neighbor, and I tried to take some pictures from each viewpoint. Sam took some pictures. I'm not sure if you've seen those also. So we go from the left side, from the top of the house, where I put a number 1 with that guy. So this is basically the hedge that you see. Just want to kind of want to show you the privacy that the landscape is providing. The second one is from that window. You can again see what's going on there. The third one is from the staircase. Fourth one is from the deck on the top right. You can see that's again causing, helping with privacy. And you can see also from the deck in front of the master bedroom. So there's a real good dense mature landscape that give us privacy. The second thing that was mentioned, not by a neighbor, as a reason by the staff that this has to be reviewed, was the sound isolation that wood fence may provide. Well, on the original fence, and there's I got an acoustic engineer that has written a report, and I don't know if you guys had a chance to take a look at it, but he first looked at the original fence. So the original fence, in order to be a sound barrier, has to have a certain density. This is these are basically wood. The thickness of the wood is only 3/4 inch, and it has to have certain density to give us sound isolation. Also, there shouldn't be any holes. It has to be continuous from the top to the bottom to the top. Whereas you can see in the original, there's gaps. Also, this is a picture that my landscaper gave me from a fence they built. Over time, as wood loses its moisture, you can see gaps opening in between the slats. So really, the original fence wasn't a sound barrier. Plus, the main thing that is written on the report is the way the topography of the grade is and the way the house has to be built causes the fence to be mainly below gathering areas. So this fence really doesn't help much with any sound isolation, because as it said in the report, once you can see someone on the other side, once it's not breaking the line of sight, then there's no value in this fence working as an acoustic barrier. And this is the other drawing. You can kind of see how the fence is going with the grade, and really doesn't have any sound isolation value. So that's basically what I had to show for just the fence itself. And there's another issue that we were dealing with. My architect and the landscape architect, my attorney, have been in communication with town, and everyone's trying to be on the correct page. But this is something that is also briefly mentioned in the staff report, and I just wanted to bring it up. We found a solution for this issue, but I think this is something that has to be discussed in the future, because I don't want other residents of Tiburon to go through what I went through, because there was a lot of back and forth between us and then the staff and my attorney and the town attorney at the time. So there's a rule that of 3 feet and separation between, let's say, a retaining wall and a fence. So in our property, there's a slope between the neighbor and our property. There's a slope from the back to the front, and there's a slope from the left to the side. But let's say the fence that I'm showing, we have that type of slope in there that we had originally. So when we built we built some 2 feet or even less than 2 feet retaining walls to flatten that area and use that area as a lawn. But when we did that, if you look at the area, because it was higher, we had to drop that area to flatten the whole thing. But if you look at the fence, if I go back and go to the next slide, when you look at the fence stayed at the original grade. There was no change in where the fence is. It wasn't a higher elevation. And in the front, we had to raise a little bit. Again, it's less than 2 feet. Less than 42 inches doesn't even need design review. It's less than 2 feet. But again, I want you to pay attention to where the fence it is. It is right where it was supposed to be at the beginning. So, but the way that retaining wall was designed, and we weren't aware of that at the time, was 2 feet from the fence, and it triggered a lot of like confusion about this thing. Well, I just put this in here with this drawing. If you look at this retaining wall here that is shown in the rule of you can kind of see that how the retaining wall is changing the grade behind it. So if, let's say, you didn't have this retaining wall and you put a fence on the grade, the fence is going to go higher. Let's say neighbors behind it, they're going to get impacted. Compared to the pictures that I showed you, where there's no impact. And my architect was, and you know, all our team had this discussion about the reason why this rule is written is because we don't want people to present a big wall, you know, without any breakage. But let's say in this instance, we thought it doesn't apply, and we found a solution to go around it. But I just want to present this so that maybe there should be some more amendments or some more clarifications for people after me who want to, you know, build fences or things like that. So the solution was to basically cut the fence 2 feet down, so that when we add these two heights, it's less than 6 feet. And it looks a little funky, but it's fine as far as just satisfying that rule. But I think from the beginning, you know, this wasn't something that should have been taken a lot of staff time, my attorney time, town attorney time, or whatever. So I appreciate if this is looked at for people in the future. Again, all right. So the end. Yeah, well, the bench I think was addressed in the report. We also added a few benches. And I think there's a rule that, you know, you can have, you know, removable furniture, but if you have fixed furniture, you have to put it on the plans. And then, you know, it's on the staff report. There's a bench and there's another retaining wall behind it. And the staff report says even if you take the benches out, people can sit on the retaining wall. So it doesn't really change the way you use this space. But yeah, that's I didn't just put it in there because I think it was explained in the staff report. So at the end, we want to use the vinyl fence because the vinyl mesh fence is widely used. Obviously, it's more durable, doesn't need maintenance, aesthetically more pleasing because it allows the landscape to unite together. It's safer choice, and because you know, the way the chain of events happen is already built, so we don't need to do anything. Versus a wood fence is a lot more intrusive, can be an eyesore looking at overall design of our house, can be a maintenance nightmare for us and also for the neighbor behind it. So over time, it falls apart. And needs the construction of a lengthy fence at this point. Plus, the way the neighbors, I mean, the vinyl fence right now can accommodate the landscape and the neighbor has and what we put in front of it versus for in order to build a wood fence, we have to cut a significant amount of mature landscape to be able to just put the posts and put the fence in there.
Right.
We have 3 minutes. I don't know if there's anything you want. Or... Right, yeah, I'm done.
All right, thanks very much. Sorry, but be back. Does anyone have questions for the applicant?
I have a question for staff.
Yes. Yes,
So I read the resolution.
yes.
Trying to find out what are we,
What you're doing tonight?
Yeah.
Is solely looking at the fence. The rest of the project and sort of laying out the foundation was something that the applicant and property owner has every right to do. But what is before you tonight is the approval of the fence. And of course, there is the benches or as part of that as well.
and we're not approving a fence of the vinyl fence being at,
We're approving it so that it meets our height requirements, so it wouldn't be at 6 feet. So, you know, it was what he was talking about for the combined, not, so whatever, what was the actual heights that the maximum? Is it 4 feet?
It varies. I think there's one section that's 4.2.
Yeah, but so it meets our requirements for that part of the code. Where you have to have that 3 foot separation, otherwise there's a combination, and so he only has a 2 foot. So it's limiting his height of the fence.
so we're not.
You're not looking
asking
at a
for- we're
variance.
Not looking for a variance. That's
No,
what I was
you're
trying
not.
to figure out. Okay, thank you.
It's only the change in material, so there's no variance or exceptions.
To approve as is, as built.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And there is, I don't know if you went out to the site, but the landscaping's in place as well.
I don't. We will now move to invite anyone from the public, if they wish to speak. They have 3 minutes. As we get our electronics away from the microphones. Is there anyone online?
Vice Chair Rosner, there are no comments from Zoom.
Thank you. The applicant does have 5 minutes if you wish to address anything, otherwise you can yield your time. Awesome. I don't know. We will now deliberate amongst the board. Does anyone want to start?
First of all, I'd like to say bravo on the color of the building, the color of the landscaping, and the fact that it recesses into the hillside beautifully. You've done a really good, really fine job of that. Black fences intrinsically are part of that, and they also disappear in the background very quickly. I've been campaigning as an architect against the use of wooden fences which deteriorate in 20 years. Waste of redwood or epay or whatever fine wood you're using to make them is just unconscionable. The combination of a fence height with a retaining wall has been a thorn in my side for 50 years of practice, so it doesn't go away and nobody seems to be able to solve it. It is a geometry issue that can only be solved by the designer. You've solved it elegantly. 4-foot fence is easy to approve. You shouldn't have had to go through all of the ups and downs, and you should get your money refunded for staff annoyance. But thank you. I would approve it in a minute.
I remember this building when I was a wee younger person, and I'm so happy of the final implementation. I remember how thoughtful you were in creating this design that, really pushed down and was very, very respectful of the neighbors, and I really appreciate it. It's a gorgeous building. I went and saw the fence. I approve it as is. This is absurd that you had to go through all this, so it is what it is, so.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I get to drive by your house sometimes 3, 4 times a day, and it's just beautiful. The landscaping in particular, just immaculately executed. So, thank you for bringing the beautiful property to the town. I also would approve as is. Wondering if it's my iPad or Suzanne's computer.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution, and that is categorically exempt from CEQA.
Second,
We'll do a voice vote for all in favor of adopting the resolution as is.
I
All opposed? None. The motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Thanks very much. We are going to take a 5-minute break if anyone needs to use the restroom before 7:59 Tehran Boulevard.
Is there any way someone could,
Is that?
I think it was the general.
my God.
Sam, turn that mic off, don't do so long, turn it back on. Before Rich talks, I turn it off, and then Rich has to talk. And then it's me.
Ready? Yes.
Everything was on and I need to. All right,
Right.
thank you.
We will now kick off 7:59 Tehran Boulevard. You have 20 minutes.
I'm gonna speak very slowly. So I don't have a ton to say, but a longtime Tiburon resident. And first time in front of Design Review Board. So great to see you guys. My name is Rich Viola. I've lived here in Tiburon for 15 years. Raised my kids here, went through all the schools here. We lived behind Del Mar. Now we live on the backside of Tiburon. And we recently purchased 759 Tiburon Boulevard, which I overheard that you like the security of the gate. It's just like that, and I haven't figured because deliveries and we're not living there. So it's a big project, all right? So our focus has really been on the main home. But we always wanted to build an additional structure above the garage. And so since we're not in a huge rush, some of the things that we wanted to do for this property were outside of, that required some variances. So we decided to go through this process. So what I wanted to do at the first slide, just because I was even confused at the square footage, as I just needed to, like, my mind needed to do a reconciliation of, so the main house is 6675. That was existing, the garage and approved, the garage over 600 is 712, and then oh,
Sorry, Rich.
oh no, it's fine.
Buzzing on.
And so what we're talking about today is this additional accessory structure. And so it's 95 square feet over, and it's over the height based on the code. It's a really unique property, as you probably saw. It's a full acre, and it has the St. Hilary's Church and School behind it. So having been a long time resident here, and even hearing the first house, like, I'm very sensitive to views. And so the first thing I did is meet all the neighbors. And since that's actually quite easy on this property, there's only 5. And so we've got support of all the neighbors to add this structure above the garage. So for context, this is the house that we purchased, and this is the render of what it will look like in hopefully 18 months to 2 years. And then this is the garage, which is a separate structure right next to the main house. And we're looking for approval today to add 1,095 square foot accessory structure above the existing garage. We came to the square footage because we're trying to utilize the footprint of the garage. All of the exterior elements match the main home that has already gone through design review. So it's stucco building, all the same colors and everything. The reason we wanted it to be as tall as it is we really wanted the structure to really be consistent with the main home. So the garage is 8'4", and the structure above is 9 feet tall. Are the rooms. So like I said, I've met with all the neighbors. Mike Gaffery is at 763. His house is right behind it. And it just, there's no view impact to anyone because they were already, the main home was basically blocking everything as it is. So that's it.
I have a question, staff. Are we allowed to thought we weren't allowed to review ADUs. Is it because it's over 95 square feet? That's the reason?
It's over the square footage and the height.
And height taller.
Oh, and the
So
height,
it-
that's why,
So
okay.
that is why it's before you and as opposed to it being a ministerial process.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And I have a question for either the applicant or staff. Since I wasn't here for the original design review, what was the garage, what was its status as part of that application? Is it new? Is it just a?
Oh, sorry, it's existing and it looks like
Right.
that.
But the plans from your first design review, was anything included?
Oh,
in
it's just a
that?
remodel, so we
Okay.
didn't go through the design, we didn't have to go through the design review board.
Okay,
Because it's just a remodel of the main house.
okay. Sounds good, thank you. Any other questions? Thanks very much. You can sit, you can.
Oh, sorry.
Now I will open it up to the public. If anyone would like to speak, they have 3 minutes. No one in the room. Is there anyone online?
Vice Chair Rosner, there's nobody on Zoom.
Thank you. The applicant has 5 minutes, if you wish, otherwise you can defer. Okay, and now we will take it to the board. Does anyone want to start?
I've been out to the neighborhood several times on adjacent properties, and this is the first time on this house, but I remember when it was built. It's a unique house. It's on an acre of land, which is the equivalent of about 4 or 5 lots on most of the houses in the area. Because it's dug into the hillside pretty significantly on the uphill side, I don't think anybody can even see it. I'm not sure of that. But all of the neighbors are oriented in different directions with good screening. And at least the 2 neighbors I spoke to said they had absolutely no problems with it. So given its lack of impact, I think it's an appropriate siting. It's an appropriate amount of building for a full acre lot. So I don't think there's much to deny it.
Other than the creepy parking gate. I'm in support of the resolution.
Yeah, closer. I don't think I can hold this. All right, sorry. Yeah, I was out to the site. I spent about 20 minutes on multiple streets trying to find, like, to see it from other properties, and I'm glad I wasn't arrested. Like I said, there's no impact. I think we do have to, there's a variance, so I think we do have to make the findings. I think obviously it's developing on an existing structure, which is, I think adding to that height, that it's building on top of the existing garage. So I think that's special circumstances. It doesn't seem like it'll grant any special privileges given other height variances in the neighborhood. And it wouldn't be detrimental to public welfare, or it would, a strict application of the height limit would result in practical difficulty. So I think we can make the findings for all 4 variances, as well as the floor area, et cetera.
I can make the variance findings as well, the 4.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution as written, and that is categorically exempt from CEQA.
Second.
We'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. 3-2-0 to 2 who are absent. The motion passes. Thanks very much. All right, up next, 539 Comstock Drive. Would the applicant please? Might be in the lobby. We'll give the applicant a few minutes to join us. Thanks very much.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And then scroll to the next slide, just go down.
Okay, got it. Has staff already made its presentation?
We don't do that. You give a presentation and then the board asks questions, so you can go ahead.
Okay, great, thanks. So my name is Eric Layton. I'm the applicant for a 539 Comstock. The owners came to me about a year ago with the idea of an addition and a remodel. They're new owners, and they were referred by another family around the corner that also I did a second story addition about 3 years ago. And it has a similar challenge that it's in a neighborhood that we really want to fight hard to respect the views of the surrounding homes. And the original developers did an excellent job of benching these sites, I think, and building homes that were very conscious of maintaining those fantastic views. This home has a second story addition that's tucked up slope. And if you can see, am I doing that right? Yeah, there we go. That didn't really come up there. But you can see 539 has got homes that are upwards of the home and then behind it. And our primary concern was making a second story addition that really respected those initial views. And so we kept the addition to approximately 16 inches taller than what the original home was, the second story, I should say. I'm going to go to this next page here. Oh, am I doing that right? Got it. Oh, yeah, perfect. Why don't we go one more? So these are photographs of the surrounding property as well as the current home, the subject home. Oh, there we go. You can see it there. So this view is looking straight on from the street, and there's well-established screening to the left, and there's well-established screening upslope. And oh, hey guys. These are the owners. We got a little caught off guard because the previous event looked like it was bigger, so I gave them some time, but we'll give some time for them to introduce themselves afterward, I think. So the primary concern really is about the impact to this home here, which is to the left or in this area here, as well as to the possibility of the home that is directly behind an upslope. But currently, I'm sure you've all been to the site. There's some big trees. There's a big pine tree there that fire will very likely have us remove. And so we've preemptively said, yeah, let's remove it. And that would be, I think, a big benefit to the upslope neighbors. Staff did an excellent job in putting together a report, and they encouraged us, and I encouraged the owners to reach out and communicate with all the neighbors and let them know what's coming down the pipe. And so we've been working on that for months. The house that's directly behind the home, I believe, is a rental, and we didn't get much response, but other neighbors did support the project and or say that they don't have objections. The home directly to the left as you're facing the home, so that would be this home here at 535. We included them in the discussion early on, and he was reticent to pick a side or support or not support it until the story polls went up. And hopefully he's come this evening or he's provided some feedback, but he said he'd either come to the meeting and discuss. But that was our main concern, was his impact to his view. And I think we did an excellent job of limiting that to the point where it could be not substantively different than the existing house. Again, 16 inches taller. We were able to keep the roof slope at such a low slope that it just doesn't really get up into his view. Hopefully, I show here with this photograph here, you can see a little tiny bit of the story poles there. And so this is their primary viewing from this level. The garage is below and it has a window, so it appears that it might have an impact, but since it's the garage, I don't think it's a living space. And there may be some views, this is from the backyard of 539 looking up. So this is the upper story. So all of these view windows are able to look out and over from what I could tell. I was not able to go on his property to confirm that, but it's well below those view corridors. Now there may be some space below, but I don't know what those living spaces are, but it appears that the main living space is above. Beyond that, staff took a good dug in deep and established that it conforms to all the zoning guidelines. We're not asking for any variances. We're, I think, 600 or 550 feet below the maximum FAR. The upper story is stepped back as much as we could and articulated, and it definitely fits in with the neighborhood. The closest that the property comes to the street is in the front yard here. And the reason we decided to make an addition to the front yard is it benefits the home. It affords the home some good views, but it's also, if we placed an addition there, we didn't have to make a bigger upper story. So that was the decision we made here. And I think we'll go to the next page here. Let's see, I'll go down. So this is the proposed site plan. And this is the upper story addition in essentially the same footprint as the existing upper story. This is the addition to the front. And this is a small addition to the back. And the conversion of the garage is here. And so we're able to get a reasonable sized home in a very similar footprint with limited impact on construction as well. So the original benching of the home, so there's almost no excavation. Literally, we're just going to dig the footings, and that's the only export for soil. So there's no significant impact to the existing grading or drainage patterns. I'll show you the existing. So you can see that the footprint of the building is very similar, and that this is the original 2-story, this is the original 1-story. And so we're infilling this area here and the small addition to the front here. But again, the way the topography goes upslope here and back here, all of these homes here and here are able to see out and over to the primary views. And I think we were successful with that. So here's the floor plan, and I'm sorry, we've got 11 minutes left. Is that the way it is? Okay, yeah. So here we have the floor plan, which I'm sure you've seen. The garage would be converted here. The addition to the front lower floor is here, and then we've got new stairs up to the upper floor, where same footprint here, and the small addition to the kitchen is here. And then this is the upper floor, which is essentially the same footprint as the existing house. The existing home had very low, steeper pitched roofs with gable ends, so it only had like 250 official square feet. So this sticks with the same footprint essentially, but it has walls with very low slung roofs. So here's our elevations with comparative. So we've got existing elevations and then the proposed. And you can see that we're, like I said, this line here, if you're behind this, you have a 16-inch increase in height. And if you're upslope, you would view. So if you're, this wall here is the least articulated, but it's really tucked in against the existing hillside and foliage, and the neighboring home is views above it. And so that's the back view, or the upslope view. And then this is the rear view of the home from the rear yard. This is a section. And we've kept these roof plates at just normal 8 feet with just very low roof pitch. And we ran gables on all 4 sides to give it an interest and articulation from all directions, rather than just going up with a typical gable end. It's got gables on all 4 sides. I thought that had a nicer look to it. It'll be, wood siding, and the windows, I like to put some mullions in. And there's great views there, but the mullions give it a more traditional look that I think is appropriate for the neighborhood. Let's see what else we have. So that's the end of those. So I'm going to take it back to the site plan. I think staff really did a good job of describing the efforts that we've made, working with the neighbors, and essentially creating a design that fit the client's needs, the owner's needs for their family, but really doesn't impose significantly on the neighbors. And that was really our goal. I'm going to give the owners a little bit of time to describe their project, well, basically introduce themselves, essentially. But beyond that, maybe we could save a little time and I can answer some questions, but I don't think I want to belabor the proposal too much. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And that way I can answer questions or respond in any way. Does that make sense? Okay. You guys want to say hi? Yeah. So you just.
Should we come up here?
Yeah, thank you.
For
Okay.
You need to talk into the,
Yeah.
okay.
There were
You can even pull up a chair if you want.
Okay.
So you don't have to stand. Yeah.
This is the first one that we've done of these, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're Dean and Joanna Riskus. Thank you for having us and considering our application. We moved here in July. I guess officially moved in
Officially
August.
August, yeah.
From San Francisco. I'm from down the peninsula. My wife's from New York. But we've had so many of our friends and community have moved here over the years, and we're just so excited to be here and be a part of it. And are loving it. Kind of skipping around the neighborhood. If you see people skipping around, that's probably us. But we have two girls, 5 and 3, Muriel and Francesca, and came into this house just seeing, kind of dreaming about the potential of it, and we love the area. We love that part of Tiburon in particular because of access down to the bike path, and then also with family visiting from down the South Bay, it's kind of easy for them to access and come see us. We both also work in San Francisco, so it's kind of convenient to get out from that location. But yeah, we were really coached by Eric and wanted to expand to meet the needs of our family and young kids, and also having family over, and try to do what we could within the constraints of respecting the neighborhood and the area and the views, and hope you see that in design.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
You still have 6 minutes, unless you'd want to yield your time, and see if the board has any questions.
I have no questions.
I have one question, or maybe.
I want to take over there.
Maybe it's 2, yes, architectural. Just had a question about the current garage. It's a 1-car garage currently?
Yes, correct.
And is the driveway Are there changes to the driveway in width or?
Slightly. So our goal there is to create a driveway that can accommodate two cars side by side, fully on the property. And currently, there's some vegetation here, which, is kind of next to the neighbor, but doesn't do much. And then over here, we could make it a little wider. And so, California, they do need some storage, and we've put a laundry room and a pretty good storage space in there. So they've got good storage for the items that they typically need, but aren't worried about their cars. It's just not a necessity. And then they've got a little bit of space back here and here for additional storage if need be, which is very tucked behind and not impactful in the neighborhood. So that we felt it was a good trade-off to convert that space because it just allowed us to keep the massing smaller in general.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Hmm?
Any other questions? Seeing none from the board, we'll open up to the public. So you can sit down. If there's anyone in the public that wishes to speak, please come up to the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Seeing no one in the audience, is there anyone online?
Vice Chair Rosner, there's one person with their hand raised. I'm going to turn on the audio for Jennifer Schmidt.
All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hi, thank you all. So this is Jennifer Schmidt. My husband, Jason Roselle, and I own 535 Comstock, the property which is next door and directly uphill from 539. We've lived here since 2018. We have a 5-year-old son. We love the neighborhood. It's a very special place. Two of our most important things or favorite things about the neighborhood are, or our location, are the view and the privacy. So we were concerned when we learned about the intended second-story renovation. The plans do impact our view, our primary view, which is mostly on the south-facing back of the house. But we greatly appreciate the efforts to minimize that impact. There's some water blockage, but the plans really do minimize it. So ultimately, as I told Dean, the applicant, we are not going to be requesting changes to the building plan. We do have less visibility into the intended landscaping plan though, and now that has a potential of a higher detriment. So I just wanted to voice a few requests. The plans indicate removal of some trees on our property line. We're fine with that. We welcome that. But if those are intended to be replaced, that we do request that any vegetation be maintained at a height which is at or below our shared hedge fence, which is quite tall. The previous two owners of 539 maintained all the vegetation at the hedge height, so as to not interfere with our primary view. And then the last thing that I wanted to request is that the plans indicate removal of a large pine tree at the rear of the property. That tree affords us great privacy from the homes that are on the upslope of Silverado above us. It's also one of the few mature trees in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful tree. It's a beautiful part of our neighborhood. It supports a lively ecosystem of animals. And as I said, it's an important privacy screen for us, so we would request that it not be removed. And that's all I have. Thank you for hearing and considering our requests.
Thank you very much. Anyone else online?
There are no more comments.
Thank you. We'll now invite the applicant up for 5 minutes. If you'd like to say anything else.
So the two trees that I had identified as being removed, I'm primarily preemptively assuming that the vegetation management plan and or the fire department would request their removal. They fall under the pyrophytic type of tree. One of them is a juniper. And, you know, more and more communities are becoming rightfully aware and concerned about the type of vegetation that our communities have allowed to spring up. I grew up here in Tiburon in the 60s and 70s. You look at photos of these hills and they're really were just denuded of large trees. They might have had some native live oak, coastal live oak trees, but and some grass, but very few other trees. The two trees that I identified are on the naughty list, as it were. One is, as I say, a type of juniper, which is on the property line, which, you know, obviously I just identified it as, hey, they're going to want that out. So we might as well just put it out. The one on the back of the property, the larger pine tree, those two are on the, when a fire comes, they are very, very, very problematic. They just catch fire. They've got a lot of resins in them. And so I've just sort of, as an architect, I tend to lean into removing those types of trees because they're naughty and they will cause major significant problems. Now, that said, the owners have been ambivalent about the tree because it doesn't negatively impact them. They just thought, hey, it would be a very nice thing to offer the upslope property to have their view back, essentially, because it completely blocks a large portion of their view to the west. But the comment from the folks at 535, you know, yeah, it does afford some privacy that they have at their level between them. Our project is down below. So one suggestion would be to allow fire department to have it removed and then put in another type of vegetation, a tree there or a shrub that could be maintained at, let's say, 15 feet that might be below the view corridor of the upper house and allow for some privacy between the other two. The other point is that tree is kind of up and above, and there's a lot of other vegetation below, which also provides screening that we're not suggesting we would remove. So it's kind of a tricky problem. We could just throw our hands up and say, no, we won't remove it. Fine. Or we could say, hey, let's just let the fire department tell us what to do. Or we could be proactive about it and say, hey, let's remove it and then put in a type of plant, which I could say Mirica grows up to about 15 feet. It's a native, fairly drought resistant plant that could be maintained at a particular height at that location. So those are some options.
Staff, it's a 30-inch diameter tree at DBH. So is that a heritage tree? Would that have to go through design review board, or does the fire department trump whatever?
So I don't know the conversion for DBH, but what our guidelines state is that if you measure 2 feet from the ground, if it's 60 inches or greater circumference, then it requires a tree permit. If it's less than 60 inches and it's not an oak tree, then it does not require a permit. And that's measured 24 inches from ground.
I think 30 inches diameter is significant.
Yeah, that's 60 inches.
Yeah. Yeah, DBH is usually at breast height, but I think a 30-inch
That's gonna be
diameter is
that's greater than 60.
significantly greater than the 60-inch circumference. So,
It would probably need a permit, yes.
okay.
But unless fire says it needs to be removed, and then that bypasses the permitting system.
So my suggestion is maybe just say we've removed that request to remove it, and we can let fire dictate if they want it removed, they'll tell us. Otherwise, it can remain and we can take it up as a separate issue. Sorry. Kick the can, as it were.
I think that's something we can discuss. Do you have any other questions?
Just one observation, which is the bulk of that tree is up above the view height of the people uphill
Okay.
and probably constitutes a view blockage for a dozen other homes at a higher level. And it is this is an opportunity to get it out while you're under construction and have a messy yard. So I wouldn't arbitrarily just not do anything.
Okay, thanks very much. At this time, you can sit down. We will deliberate amongst the board. Anyone want to lead us off?
I'll do it. I think this is a sensitive design job in a tough site with a lot of tight variables, and I think the architect has addressed all of them very well, including minimal view impact on uphill and side neighbors. I don't think there are any changes that I would make that say could make it better instantly, and for that reason, it's pretty sensitively done. I just say it ought to be approved as is. The tree issue is a really important issue, and we're going to need to start addressing it overall Tiburon. So I'll use a minute here just to say it costs about $5,000 to remove that tree, because I've removed a dozen of them in recent years. And Tiburon is, PG&E was, you may have seen their overflight last week with for an hour, they drove a helicopter over our town. And what they were doing was photographing Tiburon to see what the potential fire hazards were, along with other things. And the backside of our Tiburon Peninsula is nothing but a fire waiting to start, with a westerly or an easterly wind blowing it uphill and over and into us. We don't see it, but when I moved here about 50 years ago, the hills were bare. There were a few scrub oak trees on them, but small coast live oaks. But every house that moved in planted half a dozen to dozens of trees, bushes, and shrubs for privacy. And the issue was privacy at a low level. So you were screening from your adjacent house. Now those trees are all up here. They don't provide privacy. They do provide shade, but they also are enormously
Get out of the request.
Yeah.
And
Fire
this
problem.
guy is making it a big deal.
So my feeling is the big trees are going to have to go in Tiburon, and a lot of the shrubs and bushes too, unless we want to let the fire take it out. And the fire will do it if we keep the trees. So.
Thanks for that positive outlook, Jim.
Nina, do they have to apply for a tree permit? In addition, is that going to require design review? And is that under consideration right now or no?
If it was,
It says
If it wasn't part of this permit, then they will need
because
to,
on the plans it says to be removed.
then it,
It's part of, since it's included as part of the proposal, it wouldn't need a separate tree permit. It would be, they could remove it as part of this design review or their building permit.
I hate the sound.
But- by doing it now, if they
Yeah.
remove it now, they will not need to go forward with the tree permit
Okay,
because
so
we're
the
already
resolution-
considering. Yeah,
The resolution includes the removal of the tree. Okay.
yes.
With that in mind, I would suggest that we leave it as part of the planned proposal, and then it can be diverted at some other point. Just to give them a $500 bonus for another tree permit and hearings.
And then they could consider what to replace it with later.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm in support of it. So I have no changes to the design and no other requirements. So I think I could approve it as is.
Yeah, I visited the property. When I was just reviewing the notes, I was like, how did they add so much square footage without increasing lot coverage? And then I realized the garage was converted. It gave me a little bit of hesitation at the beginning, but then just knowing that they're able to accommodate 2 cars in a more practical driveway versus, I don't even, I'm sure it's hard to drive into that garage and open your doors, so it makes practical sense. I'm in, it sounds like both camps, definitely Jim's camp. I would leave the removal of the tree, especially the pine trees they're all going and they're making a lot more problems than they are privacy at this point. I would just encourage, I don't think we need to add a condition to replace it. I would just encourage you all to work with your all surrounding neighbors to replant something that provides maximum privacy while minimizing view blockage. I've definitely learned more other people's trees affect neighbors most often versus your own. So it's just going to have that dialogue, especially when mature things that have been here for 50 years that do provide a lot of privacy are just dying. So it's good to be proactive since many trees grow slowly.
And we probably should encourage them to maintain the hedge height as the architect suggested on the replantable items.
Yeah. So with that, yeah, I'm in support. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make another motion.
You're on a roll.
To adopt the resolution as is. We can't really make a condition on the tree, but and that it's categorically exempt from CEQA.
Second.
We'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. The motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last but not least, for Santa Ana Court. Thank you for waiting. You have 20 minutes.
If you want to rent a second chair, I'd be welcome to that. That's not compost, that's plastic.
Okay.
I don't know, I'll sit up there and get away.
So I'm Don Wilberg, landscape architect for the project. This is Barbara Butler. She is the playground designer. She should look at her website. She does really fun stuff. They're all original things. She's got many projects in municipalities, public places, as well as private residences. So first of all, on this site here, the house is up here. Lyford Drive is along this side. There is a single family here. There's a single family here. There's a single family up in here, and then there's a single family here. The area that's in question, we're doing play equipment in this area in this corner. It's already been approved for the play area. We had we were going to put in a trampoline in there. And obviously that was probably a little noisier than the swing set, but it was already, this area has already been approved for that kind of activity. One of the things that's happened, and I'm going to go to the next slide here, is that in order to have a play area, we built a wall in here that was all approved, and that leveled this whole area out. to make it more usable. We have put in magnolia trees along the edge here as a screen that'll get up probably about 12 feet from their height. This area is 6 feet below the wall. This dark green is an existing hedge. I mean, we just put that in. It's an Insta hedge. And it is intended to be 6 feet tall. I think it's probably 5.5 right now. And so it's a very dense thing that you can't see through. We've also added a railing here that, you know, because it's a wall, and that railing is a sound fence, if you will. It's a material from Denmark that it has lots of padding in it, and so it's designed to keep the sound on one side or the other. The play equipment, we have two items. We have a swing set, which is this area right in here. You can see the planter below with the magnolia here and the thuya screen here. And then we have a slack line, which means that you just have one pole here and one pole there, and you have a rope for your hands and you have a lower rope for your feet. We are using, instead of a typical metal play structure or those things, we've been able to salvage these. These are actual pictures of the logs themselves. We salvaged these from a golf course, and fortunately, it was a nice find. The tops of the structures are, if we're at 6 feet here on top of our hedge, we are probably about, I think we're 11 feet above the play area on this one and 12 here. I think we're 12 here and 12 here. So one of the things that's happened here is that we did receive, as you probably have read, we did receive a letter objecting to a noise that we would be generating there. And that is from this residence here. You can see where their backyard is right here, and this white line is approximately our property line. This line in here is the setback, the rear setback, and that's the side setback. One pole of the slack line is in the rear setback, one pole is on the side setback, and these poles here are in the side setback. One of the things, as you can see, this picture was taken before any of the construction in this area had happened. So this is the outline of the old existing pool. And as you can imagine, the amount of noise and play around a pool would greatly impact this area than any play area, than the sound and noise from this area. The pool is now up here, up at the height of the main residence, and this is all a patio up in this area. So the vast majority of noise and activity are going to be here and are going to be in here, and the impact to this neighbor has greatly been reduced. This neighbor, okay, so this house, this is the garage, and that faces the play area. And so there aren't any direct windows that I know of, or major windows that are looking at this direction. The house is lower than what's here, so it's all looking uphill. This house here this is the garage area. It is approximately 12, 13 feet below this level here. And then we have our 6-foot fence or 6-foot hedge here. And so it's very difficult to see anything there. Their major views are on this side, and their activity area is over here.
We have not gotten any response from this neighbor. This neighbor has no problems with what's going on. There's a pine trees right in here, some other I think there's some acacias in here also. There's other trees here. This is all existing screening in this whole area. We beefed up the screening along the edge. And there's a small little slot in here that you might be able to see from a house maybe over here. Okay, way over away. I tried to find a house, I mean, some place where I could actually visually see it, and I couldn't. And it was so small that everything else was dwarfed. This neighbor here is completely blocked by this house and has no, this area has no effect. Let's see. So we put up the story poles. If you were out on the site, you could see where they were. You probably saw the vegetation that was along the edge. We have no view from Lyford. We have an existing fence right there. And your view is going to be way up in here. Our play area is down in this area at the very far edge. Here's our view from Lyford. You can barely see the house from this area. I mean, that's this area up in here. And we can't even see from up here, we can't see the roof of this neighbor here. Let's see. Let me go back to the other drawing. We did consider putting a sound fence along this area, mainly for their privacy. But at this point, we have not done that. And this is the view towards the neighbor's garage that had the objection. You can see the garage. The area where their pool is right there behind the garage. And this is that flag is the height of our highest pole. Here's our Insta hedge. Here's our magnolias that we've installed. Barbara, did I miss anything?
Oh, just hi. Just that it's they're actual natural eucalyptus logs, tree trunks. And so I'm peeling them and grinding them. They're very natural, and so that I don't think they will be very visible at all. They're not getting stained, colorful, or anything. It's a very natural play area. And we just liked the fact of using these logs and having them anchor the play equipment, the simple play equipment. But we were really careful when we were figuring out where to put it. We were really mindful of the neighbors, and we thought this was the best spot to not affect anyone. And we worked hard at trying to, we got up there and looked at it. And so we were sort of surprised to have the neighbor object, because I don't think that single pole, I wondered if they actually thought it was further over, but I don't think that single pole will be very visible at all. Most of the activity is lower, except for the hand holding for the rope for the slack line. And the swing set, there's the lot coverage too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so the lot coverage is over by,
I think it's 0.1% more than what's there now. And the reason for that is that these logs need a concrete footing. So they have to, we don't want them to fall over. So we could put a swing set that doesn't have a footing on it and not have a coverage problem, but I think we're at 17.3 and maybe we're going to go to 17.4 or something like that. The neighbors
we've tried to calculate some of the neighboring areas and their lot coverages were higher, so didn't think it was all that significant.
Right, and that is the thing that we wanted the swing set to be with footings because I tried to tip over my swing set all the time as a kid. It wasn't in footings, and we'd like to have one that was actually very solid, so. And I think that's,
Can I ask you a question? If you moved the swing set over a couple of feet or the slack line, would you be over the lot would you have to ask for an additional lot coverage? You would still have to, no matter what.
yeah,
So it's not triggered by the footings, it's triggered by the amount of leveled surface that was created.
Right, it's the footprint of the actual structure that's creating the new lot coverage. So anywhere it's located would require a variance.
right, but if we did a swing set that didn't require footings, do we have to then?
No, if it's not anchored to the ground, it wouldn't require design review.
So there was already there was already a design review board or a design review judgment that the lot coverage of the existing without the swing set was okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
it
went
was the
through
variance.
last
Okay,
year.
got it. I think I was on that, but yeah.
You have. Why'd the clock stop? Paused it. Ah, okay.
the 20 minutes is only for their presentation.
Oh,
Thank you, thank you.
we want to present anything else?
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, do we need anything else we should discuss?
Probably, but I can't remember who it is.
You'll have 5 minutes if you remember. after.
Okay, so.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Why did you leave or why are you leaving the eucalyptus trunks so far wild? Are you is it?
So far,
So-
what?
They're
Wild at the top.
4 to 5 feet above the rope line.
Well, we think they're very beautiful.
Aesthetic, huh?
Yes, and
I thought
yeah.
that's fine.
they have a really nice cut at the top, and I've peeled them and I've grinded them, and we just really like the look of them. And we think it adds something, and we thought that it wouldn't really be seen, so that it wouldn't be an issue. Pardon? Yes, the weather.
Great.
All right, if you yield your time, we can open it up to public comment. Thanks very much. There's obviously no one here, so you can stay. Is there anyone online?
Vice Chair Rosler, there's nobody on Zoom either.
All right, thank you. Like I said, you have 5 minutes, but feel free to yield your time if you have nothing else to add.
Oh, you don't have any other question?
No. All right. Thanks very much. You can take a seat and we will now close public comment. Someone can kick it off.
I feel like this house has been under construction forever.
For 100 years.
Yeah, so I think that's probably more the objection by the neighbor than a very quiet slack line and,
Occasional
you're-
boisterous shout.
a
from the
court, yeah, yeah, this isn't, we've had what batting cages come before the board. This is not a very big noise maker.
I'd like to second that and add a personal vignette. When I moved here first, I lived on Greenwood Beach Road and right across from the church there. Less than a year after I moved in, the church proposed to add a daycare center for up to 60 kids, which brought all of the neighbors out on Greenwood Beach Road, and we were waving banners, figuratively speaking, against the daycare center. Much to my chagrin, a few years later, I had 2 kids that I really loved that daycare center. Not only that, the music of children laughing is wonderful to behold. So I can't imagine any really bad things happening on a swing set.
And it'd be great if it were anchored into the ground.
Yeah, I guess I'll add that, I visited the site and whether or not these are there. It doesn't change the functionality of that site. That's gonna be a play area, so I don't think these structures are gonna add additional noise. And yes, having them safely installed is for the best. I do want to note that there are variances, so I would just like to make findings for the variances if someone wants to.
I could make those findings.
I can make the findings
Alright.
as well, and I don't know how you got onto the site. There was a big,
I got on, I showed up and the contractor was actually
Oh.
there. And then I heard the story of the 3 years in the making of this project, so he was very kind to walk me to the site, so. Okay, so it sounds like we can all make the findings, given the existing structures and the other variances in the neighborhood. That this wouldn't be
it's a lot coverage variance as well as a setback
Yeah.
variance, so we can make the findings.
But I can make the findings that staff outlined in their recommendation, which were very helpful, so. With that, someone like to make a motion?
You're on a
Oh,
roll.
I'm on a roll. I move to accept the resolution allowing for the 2 variances and that it's categorically exempt from CEQA.
I second.
We'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
I
All opposed? None. The motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Thank you very much for your patience, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.